It's illegal to build wind farms in England, the UK's largest nation, and almost impossible to finish any large solar farms. Genuinely, this isn't due to some plot from cartoonishly evil corporations or an impressive lobbying effort from competitors. This video isn't actually about anything designed or desired. Instead, this is about an accidental conspiracy so widespread it's difficult to believe, but I promise you, it's true. And it's a problem that keeps fossil fuels burning, makes everyone poorer, and just stops innovation. Here's how England has accidentally made building green technologies to reduce carbon emissions impossible and illegal. Solar panels are a green tech that will ensure we can slow or stop climate change while still keeping the world getting richer, stop people from becoming poorer, and they have the added bonus of looking pretty sci-fi and cool. Today, solar power is more efficient than ever and costs 100 times less than in 1980. With all these upsides, you think the UK would be building these everywhere and anywhere, but no. England is rejecting solar farms at a rate far higher than ever before. I say rejecting because it isn't competitors or the government blocking solar farms, at least not directly, but instead it's towns and villages all across the country. The rate of rejection is pretty shocking, especially for the largest solar farms that make the greatest positive impact on national levels of CO2, defined in law as those that can achieve a capacity of 15 megawatts. These larger parks have to enter a national planning scheme that's so difficult to pass that essentially no one tries. For solar farms below 49 megawatt, the smaller farms, there are hundreds of applications to build. Between 49 and 49.999, there are 182 applications. But at 50 and over, there are only 11. 6 of these are in England, and 2 of those 6 have already been denied. It's not exactly easy for the smaller solar farms either. In fact, Britain is currently rejecting solar farms at a rate far higher than it has ever done so before. So why are solar farms being rejected? Surely there's a way of making sure that these popular, necessary, green technologies are accepted by local residents. It shouldn't be too difficult to understand what they'll accept and make sure that the solar companies actually stick to it. So let's try it out. Let's try to find what works and what doesn't with previous plans so we can actually put together a solar farm which will be accepted and liked by local people. Let's start with big and ambitious plans, the kind of solar farm which would reduce CO2 levels nationally as quick as possible. So here's the TV gardener Alan Titchmarsh on the proposed large solar farm site at Longfield.
The proposed Longfield solar farm in Essex is yet another scheme that is simply too large for the area. And if it goes ahead, it'll be the largest single-site solar power plant in the UK. I'm Alan Titchmarsh. Please buy my books.
Ah, right. So he doesn't like the large solar farm because it's, well, large. That does kind of make this larger scheme difficult, but surely if we're able to explain the necessity of the situation and the need to reduce CO2 levels, then I'm sure that we can get local residents on side. What about the local Green Party councillor?
While I support green energy, this scheme is too large, and I'm concerned about the impact on the valued landscape.
Wait, Green Party. Green.
We face a climate emergency. Earth's climate is already changing at unprecedented speed, exemplified by higher temperatures, rising sea levels, ocean acidification, and more frequent and severe floods, droughts, and storms. The consequences of the climate emergency already include wars, starvation, disease, desertification, and forced migration, not to mention species extinction.
That's weird. I mean, given the climate crisis that the Greens are fighting, you'd expect... Anyway, here's another Green Party councillor on Longfield Solar Farm. Surely we can expect their support.
Longfield Solar Farm is simply too large a scheme for the area, and I do not support it. Whilst I obviously support the progression of solar power, megasites like Longfield Solar Farm are not the way forward.
This must be an exception. What about the large solar farm proposal in Derbyshire?
The Green Party set a 2030 deadline for UK net zero, because this is in line with the latest science. See the UNEP emissions gap report on page 12. Any later, and the worst effects of climate change will become irreversible. There is a need to act quickly, and to make sure we decarbonise rapidly.
Now this is better. This is what we want to hear.
As a Green Party candidate, you might expect me to be in favour of such a project. I do believe that renewables are the future. However, I have a number of concerns which mean that I cannot support this particular scheme. Solar farms are not the future of the Derbyshire energy sector.
Big is just bad. In fact, big is so bad that not even the local Greens will help us build it. Fine, so large sites that might actually reduce national CO2 are not going to cut it. Maybe, instead, solar farms need to be proposed to be much, much smaller, like a few panels in a park or something. Here's a local Green Party councillor in Hastings responding to a proposal for a small site in their local park.
Obviously, the Green Party is in favour of increasing the supply of renewable energy. However, it has to be in the right place, and this is very far from the right place. It feels like tokenism. The council slapping a solar farm on the country park and then claiming to be acting on the climate crisis.
So big is bad, but small is tokenism, so also bad. Right, fine. We won't build big solar farms or small solar farms, just medium solar farms, I guess. What if we built a site like at Honolulu, just below the 50 megawatt per hour limit? Surely that'd be okay.
The campaign to protect rural England and the Green Party have opposed the siting of solar plants much smaller than Honolulu Road in the Greenbelt, and are fundamentally in support of green energy, just not of sacrificing valuable green spaces in a needless trade-off that's motivated by profitability.
So to avoid being rejected, solar farms shouldn't be built on any valuable green spaces and also shouldn't make a profit. So fine, okay, not big, not small, not on valuable green land, whatever that might encompass, and no one should make any money on it. I mean, we probably can't help the money part, it probably would be good for these companies to survive, but what if we just find somewhere closer to a town, not on greenbelt space? What about the solar farm site at Lullington, situated outside a village? Surely that should work.
Lullington Council says the massive scale and industrial nature of the scheme is completely inappropriate in such close proximity to a conservation area rich in interesting, historical and listed buildings.
Fine, it won't be too big or too small or in a green space or outside of town. We'll build it on land currently used for farming.
We should be encouraging sustainable food production at a local level and not taking away the land from the farming community.
We don't oppose solar, it's an important part of our green future. However, this means putting the right schemes in the right places. We do object strongly to solar farms on farmland.
Not big, not small, not in a green space, or outside of a town, or outside of a national park, or on land used for farming. Just somewhere where there's sun and open flat land and absolutely nothing else. I'm sure that'll be easy to find. Okay, what about a landfill? What about an old land?
The proposed and cancelled solar farm on the old landfill site did not comply with the approved planning application and biodiversity mitigation requirements.
We are absolutely not opposed to renewable
Not just once
If
the
it
solar
wasn't
farm has
going
been
to do
built,
so
during the
much
construction
harm,
phase,
there'd be no
such as the loss of visual
Development
amenity.
on an
industrial scale is not conducive.
Less than 2 miles from a nature reserve.
While I support green energy, this scheme is too large, and I'm concerned about the impact on the value of landscape.
During lockdown, our mental health relied on these open spaces.
It's simply too big, and it's not the right location.
Will be replaced by isn't the sort of place you associate with solar farms.
The message to take from this is that if you want to build solar power in Britain, everyone supports you. So long as you don't build it anywhere near them or anywhere near anything they might drive past, walk through, look at, or otherwise know exists. Easy. Oh, and even if you do all of that, the process will take several years. This is all the more frustrating as many of the more salient and frequent objections to large solar farms are just plain wrong. For example, the chief reason often given is that solar panels will decrease biodiversity. This just plainly isn't true. Installing solar panels can actually increase biodiversity. If you take an open field and add in various forms of shade, you're going to increase the amount of animals in the area that like and thrive in shade. You're going to increase biodiversity. You're also not removing all of the sun from the field. There are gaps between the panels and around the solar farm itself. You're in fact just adding in a new environment that other diverse life can enjoy. And indeed, many solar panels now can be built much higher so that you don't get the same impact on the sunlight on the field beneath them. However, in those cases then many people tend to object that the solar panels are too tall. This isn't just supposition. In a recent study, solar farms have been shown to increase biodiversity by over 60%. Even the objections about farmland aren't anywhere near subtle enough. building solar panels on farmland doesn't make farming more tenuous. Firstly, farming is a rough business and farm owners can go bankrupt after a bad season or two. Having solar panels on a field allows for farmers to have some passive income, which can help them invest in their business and be more secure in the long term. In other words, it can literally keep farmers working. Not only that, but land beneath solar panels can actually still be used for grazing cattle. You don't need to get rid of its use in farming at all. Finally, there is often an objection that what would be most useful would be to layer every single house with its own individual solar panels. Now, this would obviously be good and we would make a bunch of net gains on that, but that isn't necessarily good for a national grid system. You need farms in locations that the national grid can choose to turn on and off power in order to make sure that the national grid stays stable and people get constant electricity to their homes. Being able to turn on and off power supplies is incredibly useful, and it's not something the national grid can do if it's mounted on someone's rooftop. Now, these are just the most salient arguments against solar panels. I'm not even responding to some of the others that we've also seen. The cumulative effect of all this objection and difficulty is pretty obvious. Barely anything gets built. But at least this is the worst that it can... No. It gets worse. Much worse. Wind farms are worse. Honestly, solar farms are easy compared to wind farms. If you want to build wind farms in England, well, you just can't. In 2015, the government made them illegal. Okay, not technically illegal, you can still technically build them, but they made it so hard to build them that it might as well be illegal. Let me explain. Any proposed onshore wind farm must ensure that the proposal for building has fully addressed all local community concerns and that the proposal has their backing. Now, this all sounds good and fair, but means in practice that as all concerns must be fully addressed, any local objection whatsoever, any balance against the local people is fatal to any proposal. That means a single objection can sink an application to build a wind farm. Someone thinks the wind farm will disrupt their view of the local hills, it fails. Someone thinks these wind farms are too close to their town, it fails. Someone thinks wind farms are ugly and will ruin the local vibe. You guessed it, it fails. Before you consider that I'm making this up, this isn't an exaggeration. Between 2009 and 2014, before the change in the law, there were 333 sites that applied for wind farms, with 1,498 turbines. After the law changed from 2016 to 2021, there were only 14 applications to build wind farms in England, a total of 23 turbines. Of these applications, only 11 were accepted, creating a total accepted, but not built, just accepted, 20 turbines, meaning that between 2016 and 2021, the number of successful applications led to only 2.7% of the amount of turbines built before the change in the law. 2.7%. But to make this even clearer, this is only accepted turbines. England has managed to actually build only 2 turbines, not farms, turbines, in the last 3 years. The change to planning laws gave so much power to local pressure groups and any objecting individual that Britain has effectively made wind farms illegal. And as a result, in the highest point of climate crisis concerns, has just stopped building wind farms. But worse still, even if planning is, through some miracle, accepted, it doesn't mean that the turbines are actually built in any good time. For example, the offshore wind farm Hornsea 3 was originally proposed in 2016. It will finally be connected to the national grid in 2027. To put that in perspective, the Empire State Building almost a century ago took under 2 years from planning to finished construction. Wind farms are cheap and easy to construct, but planning laws make it so impossible to do so, it takes 13 years to complete, and that's only when it's offshore. If it's onshore, you just aren't allowed to build it at all. This is all the more frustrating as solar and wind are win-win. They're cheap, efficient, effective, they let us reduce bills, reduce CO2, and keep our power consumption just as high as we want it to be. They aren't the whole solution, but they're a significant part of it, at least until we have fusion or other sources of power. For now, though, Britain is essentially banned from building onshore wind and prevented from building any major solar. Until we find a way out of this, we're left instead with fossil fuels, a few dams, and of course, at least, offshore wind.
Communities in Suffolk are threatening the UK government with legal action after Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng last month approved 2 controversial wind farms off England's east coast. Suffolk residents had objected to the proposals because of the design and location of the onshore infrastructure needed to connect them to Britain's electricity grid.
The solution to this is not difficult. We can dramatically improve the world right now, and all it takes is permitting ourselves to actually build the cheap, efficient, green technologies we already have immediately in front of us. Thank you to all the excellent voiceover volunteers for the video, and to you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, Britain Remade is running a petition to lift the ban on onshore wind. I've put a link to the petition in the description below. I'm Dr. Lawrence Newport. See you next time.